One of the things we talked about over the years is the use of some of the tools, and Amy was here earlier talking about some of the tools the NTIA has. We are pleased to announce today that we put together, and this is a result of hearing some feedback from our 2 task force committees in terms of what they need and what some of the tools that would be helpful to them as they deploy projects or as they even plan projects. So today we're going to announce the launching of our New York State Broadband Resolution Center and Resource Portal. And again, this is a living website that we're going to continue to accumulate data and be able to provide providers and communities and program leaders a resource to actually use this to plan projects and to deploy projects as well. The Broadband Resource Center is a central repository to help those involved in broadband easily find documentation related to broadband expansion more quickly and efficiently. Many of the data sources that you'll see in there are ones that you might have to go to different sources to actually get. So the idea for this is to make this a dynamic website that all that data can come together, mapping information, even poll information. We've been very fortunate to have many of our utility poll providers give us this information and also have us update that information as well. So again, this is going to be used for multiple reasons. Project planning, looking at the existing service in an area, and also for our funding opportunities as well, including New York, in terms of planning those projects, carving out service areas and looking at the existing service. There's a login and password that will be created. We're going to have the information outside here. We have some sheets so you can actually register for those user IDs. Again, we'll just be collecting them, and then we'll give you the user ID and password to log in. We also have the Resolution Center that's part of this website as well. And again, if you envision a help desk system almost for broadband projects, we've heard from many of you over the years from federal project planning, implementing federal program grants from NTIA, USDA, and some of the problems that occur in terms of even polls and attaching on polls, any problem related to grant funding. We have many of our state stakeholders, including ones that you would deal with on a regular basis, that are part of this. So what we can do is we can manage those problems, resolve the problems, and also keep a living record of that so we can actually go to the policy that's actually affecting that, whether it's poll attachments working with the PSC, whether it's one of our federal grant partners or one of our state grant partners as well. So again, this is a living website. You'll see a lot of that information in there today. And we invite you to go ahead and register for a user ID and use that. But the idea is to keep updating that data. And to that end, if there's any local leaders or we often, when we go to some of these events, receive a lot of information, maps. Sometimes we get big maps we get handed as well. So what the idea is to collect that, obviously, in electronic format, be able to collect that and aggregate all that information into one place. And it's easily managed in terms of navigation, in terms of looking at a specific region, looking at the existing technology that exists in there today, speeds, technology, and so forth. So we want to make that all available. The other piece that's in there, too, that is new, is we have a fiber inventory project that we had underway for the last year. And this is the identification of fiber that's available throughout the state, managed by the state in some cases, open access networks. Again, putting all that information into one resource that you can use to actually see what's available in there, so we leverage existing assets and we plan projects accordingly. So we invite you, anyone that is into project planning in terms of broadband projects, please register for a user ID. We'll provide a resource guide as well. And if you need any help using that, we'll also be able to obviously provide assistance for navigation for that. So thank you very much. Yes. You can register as of today. We'll set up the user ID with... Yes, we'll be right. There's not a window. We're going to be able to accept applications in terms of the registration for the user ID over the next 2 weeks. I'm also pleased to that end also in terms of project planning. Our next session is actually going to be talking about local planning with our local leaders. We have Deb Socia here from Next Century Cities, Steve Ross from Broadband Communities Magazine, Chris Stewart from USDA, who's sitting right in front of me, a very important partner we've had over the years as well, and Kyle Wilbur from New York State Department of State. So we're going to start in just a few minutes with that session. Is that going to be here, Angela? I'm sorry. You can look at the agenda. We have a couple of sessions also that are outside this room, but the session I just spoke about with Deb Socia will be in this room. This will be probably the last time we're going to be together as a group. So I did want to thank everybody for coming to the summit over the last day and a half. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. I hope you learned and can pick up some ideas, either whether it's a project or a project partner. But I really want to welcome you again next year for our next summit. But thank you for your attendance this year. We appreciate your attendance. Thank you.
so thankful they have a stool. It's an important part of this process. Very often I end up standing behind one of these and I can see this much. So, thanks so much for inviting me to be here today. I'm really happy to be here to represent Next Century Cities. We are not, have not been around for a really long time, and in fact, our launch was last October. And we currently have 94 member cities, including Albany. It was wonderful to meet Albany's mayor here today in person. So after watching Amy, I'm going to pay careful attention, make sure I keep track. So we had a group of mayors get together about a year and a half ago and talk about what are the issues that make it difficult for you to manage broadband infrastructure and growth within your city. And here are some of the issues that they identified. In particular, the gaps in the national dialogue were important. That what happens within the city is not necessarily what gets heard in D.C., nor does it get necessarily discussed there. And our attitude is kind of the cities are where it's at, right? The mayors and the people in our cities are making stuff happen, and we want to make sure their voices are heard in D.C. Then they also wanted to talk to one another, which you heard Amy speak about this morning, the importance of being able to say, I'm an IT director in Albany. I want to talk to the IT director in Chattanooga. Well, it's nice when you have somebody who can make those introductions and help you have those conversations. Or maybe somebody calls me up and asks a question like, we're having a real problem with our dig once policy. Well, I know somebody who can help you with that dig once policy. So those are the kinds of things we've been able to do with regard to that. And then making it possible for collaboration to happen. We run some regional and national convenings where people can get together and talk. We're actually going to do something in the fall in New England. We hope many of you will be able to attend. And then they really recommended a new city-to-city collaborative. And that's what was launched. And so here are our current members. This actually shows 93. We have one more, so it's 94. So we're growing rapidly. Our launch was last October, so that between October and now, we've added 94 cities. We just added Duluth. So, and our city size varies from Los Angeles, which had an interesting RFP announcement this week, to cities as small as Leverett, Massachusetts, or Ammon, Idaho, which are really tiny communities. They're rural, suburban, and urban. Some have millions of homes. Some have dozens of homes. Some of them have municipal broadband networks. Some have public-private partnerships. Some work with private partners. Some are Google cities. Some haven't figured out what they're going to do yet. So problems facing our communities that we have identified and that were pretty well surfaced in our convening initially. Not having prioritization. It was great to hear the mayor this morning say, this is a need and not a want, and it's like water. It's like electricity. And I think that's becoming more common understanding, but not everywhere, and we really want to elevate that and talk about that. And then, we all know that there is a lot of partisan politics happening around this issue. We would like to claim it's not a partisan issue. It doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat, progressive or conservative. When you need broadband access, you need broadband access. I heard someone once say it's like filling a pothole. It's not Republican or Democrat. It just needs to get done. And it feels like that, and we hope to make that clear to folks. We believe that our cities should have the right to make the decision about what works best for them. So we actually did take a stand against the anti-municipal broadband options within 19 of our states in this country, and we really do care about that issue because we think the cities know best. If the market were going to solve this problem for all of our cities, the problem would be solved. But if you're a for-profit company, it's pretty hard to take a risk to build out to a very rural community because the profits won't be there. So we ought to let that city make the decision about what will work for them. If a city wants to build their own municipal broadband, we are happy to support that. If they want to work with a partner, we're happy to support that too. We just believe cities should have the right to make the decision. We also believe in competition. Clearly, competition has had an impact when you think about what's happened in the Google cities. So Google comes to Kansas City, and all of a sudden there's a flurry of announcements. Google goes to Charlotte. They've announced in Charlotte. Well, here come a bunch of announcements about other folks building gigabit networks. I think that has an impact. If you only have one choice, I lived in Boston for many years. We had one choice. If there aren't options, there's no motivation. And I think competition is always healthy, and certainly in the case of broadband. So all of these issues that we have here actually led to the list of 6 principles, and you can see how related they are. And I talked about several of them, and the last one, collaboration benefits all. When we get to talk to one another, as cities, as CIOs, as mayors, as folks who are doing digital inclusion, we all learn from one another and we're all better for it. And we believe in that principle, and we really do help folks make that happen. So what do we actually do day to day? We actually support our cities, equip our cities, and elevate the conversation. So when we support our cities, you can see Jim Baller here. Some of you, I'm sure, know Jim. He has been a great supporter to us, as has Joanne Hovis, who may be here in the room. Our policy director is Chris Mitchell. Many of you may know. He works part-time for us and also continues his work at ILSR. These are folks that have been incredibly valuable to our members. They call me up with a problem, and within a very short period of time, we can get a bunch of people on a call to help them out. Those are sort of the external experts. We also have a lot of internal experts. If you want to know how to work on an incremental approach to get your city hooked up, I would connect you to Jory Wolf from Santa Monica, who has this amazing long-term plan that has resulted in incredible success for his city. If you want to talk to someone about a great city-based digital inclusion plan, I'd take you to Rondella, who is the CIO in Austin, who has probably the best city-based plan I've seen. So, it's nice to have options, to have city experts talk to you about your work as well. So then we help to equip our city members. So, for example, on Monday, we're going to do a members webinar on rights of way, a really hot topic, a really big issue for some of our cities. We've done webinars on dig once policies. We've done webinars on some of the rulings from the FCC. We're trying to inform and help folks have the information they need to be as successful as they can be. And then elevating city voices, which I mentioned earlier. So part of this is we know that there's some data out there. We try to collect that data and share that data, but the stories are important too. So, I tell folks, you win folks' brain with the data, but you win their heart with the story. And so we try to tell the story as well, and we'll actually have a video coming out soon from one of our cities that will help to tell a story. But we also get our mayors and our CIOs on some pretty high-level panels so that they can talk. So we're going to have a panel at the U.S. Conference of Mayors next weekend in order to make sure that their voices are heard around this issue. We bring them to D.C., we help them connect to folks at the FCC, we help them connect to folks on the Hill. The stories are important, and I think in particular the stories are important. The stories that we feel are really important are the ones you hardly ever hear, right? So, how do you join Next Century Cities? It's an actually really easy process. Having worked in a city and worked on the broadband team in Boston, I know how difficult it can be to join a new organization, and we're new, and we're still fairly small. All it takes to join is to agree to the 6 principles you saw earlier, send me an email and say, as an elected official, we agree with those 6 principles, and we want to join. We actually raise the money to make this happen, and it doesn't cost the cities anything to participate. So hopefully it's a low-risk, high-reward opportunity, and I hope that some of you who represent cities here will consider joining. We do have a set of papers at the registration desk with the principles on them and my contact information. I'd be very happy to hear from you if you were interested. Thanks so much.
We're going to try to be as efficient as possible. See, this is the one with orange. This was Deb's. This is the one with red. This is mine. Okay. I wanted to give you an overview of community resources. I'm going to start with, this is supposed to work. There we go. I'm going to start with the stuff that's available in my own magazine, but I want to go beyond that. Actually, on my list is New Century City, so what the heck. This presentation, all of the financial models that I mentioned, all of the data I showed in yesterday's study, and including a New York State breakout county by county, a bunch of other stuff is on a thumb drive, and I've still got about 25 thumb drives left, so the first ones that mob me at the end of the session get to keep the thumb drive, but it is all online anyway. I'll talk about legal sources, federal sources, trade associations, lobbying groups, and that's where I stuck Deb. Next slide. I went several slides up. Now I see what's going on. Okay. The magazine itself is free. We run 2 big annual conferences, and don't be worried that it talks about technology. It talks about technology lightly, explains the technology. Most of it is business. We like to say that we're really a business magazine masquerading as a technology magazine. What that means also is that if there is an old technology that you guys come up with a new use, or someone comes up with a new use, we rhapsodize about it. We're not just interested in the latest shiny object. And often in rural settings and in difficult urban settings, there's a trick. Someone has come up with something to save money and make a living. And as soon as that happens, we glom onto it, publish it, and put it in basically non-technical terms. What happened was very interesting. At the beginning of the recession, we had 5 competitors. There were 6 magazines in the group, 6 magazines in our universe, and there were 300 or 400 potential advertisers. The number of potential advertisers is now only half because a bunch merged and went out of business, but so did all our competitors. All of our competitors took the advice of the consultants, which was fire all your editors and reprint press releases and do only corporate sponsored articles. Since we 3 editors are all grandparents, Scott DeGarmo, myself, and Marcia Zager, and we basically own the magazine, we weren't about to fire ourselves, so we couldn't take that advice. The result is we drove all our competitors out of business. We still publish real stuff, and they were publishing press releases. Among the things in the publication, on the website, if you get past the initial homepage, is we actually have a landing page for municipal fiber to the home, and these are case studies. They go back a long way. I find it fascinating. In November, late November, I get a call from the White House. We've Googled you, and you've done a couple of articles on Cedar Falls, Iowa, and notice the Boston accent. And but you haven't done anything recent. The president's been invited to Cedar Falls. Does that make any sense for us to go? And I said, sure. Makes a lot of sense to go. Explain what was going on and that sort of thing. So I should have said no. Come to someplace in New York. We have better roadies, but Cedar Falls really is an interesting place. I wrote them. We have 3 financial models: one specifically for rural builds, one for general builds, one for private cable operator, like in a building or a planned unit development builds. They're all investor models, and they're all designed to come to easy decision making on is a build feasible in your community without paying a huge amount of money for consultants. I teach financial modeling. These models are pretty much unbreakable. There are 2 cash flow models also if you want to see how pricing and all that affects. We put them in the public domain. Hundreds and hundreds of organizations use them in the United States and abroad. They're very, very easy to adapt. If you open up a row or column, add something else, in general, it doesn't break the model. They're very well documented. You can download them with the documentation from the website. I have them on the memory stick as well in one place. And it comes with me. I'm happy over the phone or using GoToMeeting doing a tutorial for you for what you need and explaining what's going on if you're a little weak on Excel. And if it's an hour or 2 of my time, I'm happy to do it free. That's a service of the magazine. We don't really do a magazine anymore. We do an information hub that happens to publish now back up to 8 times a year. We've gone from 12 down to 6. We're slowly increasing, much against our wishes because print production is insane, especially right now. I'm here. The magazine went to press yesterday, and Marcia went nuts. And so Marcia isn't here, even though she lives down in Saugerties, very, very close by. But if you want a day or 2 of consulting, if you really need a day or 2 of consulting, we'll try to match you up with a local consultant. We have about 1,400 subscribers who are consultants, 14,000 altogether. About 200 are really spreadsheet and marketing literate, and are worthwhile dealing with. The rest are community organizers that aren't all that good at this either. If as a last resort, I'll come out and we charge very, very reasonable rates, just $1,000 a day plus expenses. So, but what we really want to do is not compete with our readers and with all the consultants in our firmament and not undercut them or anything. We just want to help get systems built, and that's a good thing. We also have the database on who's building fiber and who's planning to build fiber. We call it FiberBill. You can search it online. We have a little search site online. But there's an underlying database that's even bigger. And if you want to download the whole thing as an Excel file, we don't care. It's actually, don't try to download it in pieces. There's actually a link that says download the file. We update it every week. All our competitors have it. The FCC relies on it. I will tell you, as of late last week, there were 973 fiber systems either operating or being built. 160 of them are municipal, 140 of them are operating. The 140 cover 200 communities. Look, there's more than 15,000 communities in the United States that are big enough to own a school district. So you got to figure their prime. Only a couple thousand of those communities are being served fiber to the home by any major commercial carrier. So obviously, people don't rush out and get money from their state or get money from the federal government or tax themselves up the wazoo to build municipal networks. It's something you want to consider, and very often it's a worthwhile thing to do. The talent pool for building them isn't all that large, unfortunately. But the state, New York, is helping. They understand that. Kentucky has done the same thing. They've got a $500 million middle mile project going. Connecticut is doing it. So figure out what they're doing. But one of the key uses for this, and it's kind of a funny one, is when you're using our financial models, you actually have to get cost information. So how do you populate the cells in the Excel spreadsheet with cost information? Well, you call up a nearby operator, not necessarily in your county or your community, but somewhere within 50 miles, 100 miles, and they may be able to give you rough numbers for what it costs, local labor, local situation, to do a mile of fiber or to do a drop from the street back to a home or something like that. And so this is a very, very valuable tool for that. We find we did a big session on financing through electric co-ops at our big broadband summit in April, and everyone had a slide saying, and we used the fiber bill site on Broadband Communities to find a local contract, and do the initial hunting. Craig Settles is an incredible community organizer. He's one of this firmament of about 1,200 consultants that we know of that can help a community decide what they want. Not very spreadsheet literate, unfortunately, but he does a terrific blog. You'll never find the blog on your own because it has a name that's a link that's totally non-descriptive and drives me crazy. Frank Odet's very, very active in the Rural Telecom Congress. I'll talk about him. He does business as Lone Eagle Consulting. He lives on a mountaintop in Montana, very, very poor broadband. But if you've got a grandmother you've never been able to teach how to use a computer or why she should use a computer or why she should get online and so forth and so on, he has this magic, absolute magic. Within hours he can do this. And most importantly, he makes most of his educational materials available free online through his site. So before you start with a senior citizen program in your senior citizen center or a library or something like that, for heaven's sakes, Frank is an incredibly giving. He's got all the business he can handle, and he's happy to clone that out. He does sell some books, but he's got a lot of stuff free. On the legal and federal side, Ballard Herp's Resource Library has always been the go-to place, and it has spawned another entire organization, Click, which I'll get to in a little bit. And he sort of semi-spawned New Digital Cities. I might add, if you don't know Jim, he isn't here, didn't come this time. One of his partners, of course, was here. But Jim he describes himself as the world's happiest lawyer, and I have to agree. He is the person to enable communities to build broadband when the incumbent or the state or something like that puts a roadblock there. With luck in New York State, you will never need him, but the research library has online and free, very good. He vacuum cleaners up articles from all over the place and data from all over the place, and good at it. I want to go over to NTIA, and the most important thing, I just want to show you, you take something like the National Broadband Map, and this is up in the Northeast, what we find is that communities who can show that they don't have access, but some of the other counties and areas around them do have access, and you can see right away for the residents that why they should get access and what they should do, and it's an incredibly powerful tool. And one of the neatest things about it is up in the upper left-hand corner. There's a slider, and you can set the minimum broadband. So you can do it 25 megabits, whatever. And there's a huge database behind it. As I discussed yesterday morning in a session I ran, it is not as accurate as it should be. This is not the government's fault. This is gaming by major carriers and some smaller carriers. It's supposed to be if one person in a census block is able to get the service, then the whole census block counts as having access. Census blocks are generally very small. In an urban area, it might be 20 or 30 families. There might be several census blocks in one big building, in fact. But in a rural area, it might cover 15, 20 miles of roadway. The census expands and contracts the block in such a way that you cannot readily identify one family from the census data within the block. So it's a really funny file to deal with. And some carriers say, the heck with it, we're using census tract. And they've done that in more than one state. California has just been cleaned up over the last year. And we have a lot of trouble with that when we try to combine the data. But just the competitive stuff, showing who has broadband within 150 miles of you at a given rate and what your broadband is, very, very powerful tool, and communities should all use it. The Federal Communications Commission is really for the freaks. There's all kinds of good policy statements on it, and they're perfectly approachable. But the big thing is there's dockets, okay? And you can search the dockets for situations like your community and what carriers have been doing, okay? And if the FCC gets involved, then you can use that to help negotiate with a carrier to get more broadband that you might want. And we find that the most effective searchers of this thing across the country, Frank Odets and I have traded lines in this, get a high school English teacher. They teach research, the high school kids. The stuff is approachable. You'd think, get a communications engineer, a communications lawyer. Nah, not really necessary. The high school English teachers really have more time, work cheaper. Okay. Trade associations and lobbying groups. The Fiber to Home Council has a terrific online community toolkit. It includes our broadband primer, by the way, which we give away, and they co-sponsor it with us. By our broadband primer, it's 32 pages. We update it every year. It's available PDF. It's available on paper. We print it along with the magazine once a year. So our physical cost, our actual cost out of pocket, is roughly 3 cents per copy for a 32-page magazine-sized page thing in 4-color. So if you need 1,000 copies, our cost is $30 plus shipping. If you ask for the damn things 2 weeks in advance, we'll not only give you the primers, we'll also pay for the shipping. And a couple of people have already today. So, can we get 100 copies in Hamilton, in Sullivan County, for instance? Sure. The cost is so low, we wouldn't think of, having an invoice or something like that. Publishing economics. When you drill down into the Fiber to the Home Council Community Toolkit, you really get wonderfully detailed advice about how to organize a community, how to market, what channels to use, what to say, typical objections, typical answers to those objections, whether or not you really can build. But the bias, of course, is to build. It's a trade association for the people that sell equipment in this field. The Institute for Local Self-Reliance, raise your hand there, Chris, if no one can recognize Chris. They have a broadband section. This is their main site, but it really links to ILSR Community Broadband Networks, which is a separate site, and Chris curates it. Chris is a huge proponent of communities owning their own network, controlling their own network. I'm not necessarily that way. I don't think there's enough talent or money or financing in every case to do that. But the stuff that Chris says is very, very important. If you do a public-private partnership, you've got to understand the pitfalls. And I don't think anybody understands it better and has studied it more than Chris Mitchell. And so his site is just invaluable and also very well written. It's in plain English. Don't worry. Rural Telecommunications Congress also has a toolkit. These are, for the most part, state and some federal former regulators and current regulators of telecommunications. The site is a little bit flaky and the quality is uneven, but some of the insights in there are just incredibly valuable, and you won't find them anywhere else. Coalition for Local Internet Choice. This is a new kid on the block. This is a spin-out from Jim Baller's efforts, and Joanne Hovis, who has been wandering. She's actually running another session right now. Is doing the day-to-day work on that. And they also, they link back to Jim's stuff in a special subset of Jim's library, and they're beginning to add more stuff to their own. Next Century Cities, you've already heard. I can go right by that one. John Windhausen was wandering around here. I'm not sure he's still in the audience, but the SHLB, an unpronounceable acronym, so they call it SHLB. And this is for libraries, hospitals, schools. Get it? And the anchor institutions. I'm amazed at how many hospital, library, and school people don't know it exists. It's their lobbying organization in Washington, so you go nuts. And so we'll get to Q&A later. And let me just go back. I'm easy to find. Grab thumb drives from me after the conference. They're very small thumb drives. They're only a quarter of gigs, so it just needs to hold what I have to hold. So, next up. Who is next up?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Stewart. I'm the Special Projects and Broadband Coordinator for USDA Rural Development New York, and I'm just going to do a compressed presentation regarding our broadband programs and just a little bit of history about RD as we go. So, quick overview, agency background, REA and RUS, funding levels, program descriptions, and then FAQ. So, USDA. How many know that we do more than just farms and food inspection? Well, some folks are surprised to know that there are more than 20 sub-agencies to USDA. I couldn't find all the logos for all the agencies, so just to give you guys a visual. I'm from rural development, so not world development. That's a whole other mission. Coordinator versus general field rep. Most of you guys know Rick Gordon or are familiar. So I work kind of hand in hand with Rick. I try to figure out who you are, where you're from, what your needs are, and then I hand you guys off to Rick, who can determine technical needs, application questions, scoring, engineering, equipment specifications. So a little bit about RUS, I'm sure you guys know this. In 1935, under Roosevelt, they established the Rural Electrification Administration. So they made financing available to bring electric cooperatives to bring electricity to rural communities throughout the country, with the whole intent of matching rural areas and services with urban counterparts. In 49, under Truman, they saw telephone service also follow the REA model. And then in 95, all telecom networks were required to do broadband-capable services, again, with the match rural areas and services with urban counterparts. Current funding levels, as you can see, telecom infrastructure, $690 million, broadband loans, 75, nearly 76, DLT, one of my favorites at 19, and then Community Connect at 10 for nearly $800 million available at any given time. So telecom infrastructure loans. This one is designed more for the ILX or the incumbent local exchange carriers. We fund new and improved telecom infrastructure. Rates are set to current U.S. Treasury. I don't have those numbers with me, but it's easily accessible on treasury.gov. Funding is available year-round, it's non-competitive, so you can call us at any time, and we're there. And all infrastructure must be broadband capable. And the people that are eligible, corporations, partnerships, LLCs, tribal organizations, this won't change too much. It'll be the same players, and as always, individuals are not eligible. And it's designed for populations of less than 5,000. Rural broadband loan, funding new construction, network improvements, expansions, and refinancing with exceptions. I would defer to Rick to explain the specifics on that, but we fund equipment used to deliver broadband services, minimum requirements of 5 megabits up and down. I know Dave's standards are a little higher than that. Funding is available, again, year-round, non-competitive, so call us at any time. Again, usual players, and then this is for populations of less than 20,000. Distance learning, so this is for to obtain educational equipment. Distance learning is curriculum delivered via telecommunications. So if you have a rural student in a small community and they are trying to take maybe an AP, language, or science course out of county, out of state, maybe even out of country, that would be a little interesting, but it would be still delivering and following on the whole idea of distance learning. Telemedicine, delivery of healthcare. So if you, again, have a rural patient that cannot make the drive to a medical center that might be 50, 100, 200 miles away, they can go to their rural clinic and connect to a specialist that, again, might be a county, state, or even further beyond. It's a grant program, so it is competitive. The application window for this closes the first week of July, I believe. And again, same players, populations less than 20,000. Community Connect, this funds equipment used to provide and deliver broadband service at 5 megabits. Up, down, this is a little different because Community Connect lets you draw your service area. However, things that I've seen so far with this program is it doesn't play very well in New York due to MHIs and just the way some of the counties are cut up and the way population centers fall. So it's designed to serve areas that have no service. The project must include a community center that has 2 and up to 10 computer terminals for folks to use at no cost. They must provide that wireless service at no charge for 2 years, and then they also must expand that over to first responders, fire, police, critical community center, critical community facilities. So again, it's a grant program, so it's competitive, and that window usually closes in the first quarter of the year. A little different on the players, it expands to individuals and partnerships are not eligible. And again, population centers less than 20,000. Some of the frequently asked questions that I get as I go around the state are what levels of funding are available. As you guys saw, nearly 800, so certainly over 750 million. There's a $8 billion national loan portfolio that's active. Broadband investments in New York, I've seen on our rolls more than $100 million for telecom. I didn't see much for the broadband loan. DLT, 31 projects, 11 rural clinics, hospitals, and 20 BOCES, or school-related projects. And then Community Connect, again, because I mentioned it doesn't play well east of the Mississippi, nothing for New York there. ARA was something that's been brought up, and there was nearly $60 million of investments. As you can see, $46 million in grant and $12 million in loan. During that period, folks sort of won the lottery with us, as we kind of joke about. And then all technical questions regarding applications, scoring, other, I would defer to Rick only because he's the professional engineer. His background literally is, by trade, he is a civil engineer. I am not. Again, like I said, I am your initial point of contact. I help connect you ultimately to Rick, unless you already know him and are working with him. So I just wanted to relay contact information. If you guys haven't made it out to the table yet, I do have a larger, more granular presentation that Rick usually delivers that's on our table, as well as our, excuse me one second, all of our sheets regarding the programs. And if you're really interested in other programs offered by rural development, we have our funding matrix that details the more than 40 programs across our housing, business, and infrastructure mission areas. So useful websites really quick. This is our state website to kick it off, our eligibility website, which I encourage anyone who's interested in learning more about the programs to go to. If you type in your address, your business address, your school address, if you work for a BOCES, it can tell you your eligibility area. Then our US site, which if all this is too much and Google is your friend, just go to Google and USDA plus broadband. It should take you right to us. Just quickly wrapping up, we all know that rural access to broadband will be critical in the 21st century digital economy, and that goes cross-spectrum, whether it's business, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, whether it's community facilities, whether it's public safety. One thing I like to mention, in 6 years, we've completed more than 16,000 projects for $2.4 billion invested through rural development, not just the broadband portfolio, but mission area-wide. And we look forward to working with you. We're doing great things, and if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to call. Again, my card is out there. Rick's card is out there. We can do a teleconference. We can do a meeting. We're down to one GFR now because Rob O'Hara retired, so a in-person visit may be a little more challenging, but you can certainly ask Ann. We've gone out of our way to accommodate when folks are looking for us. We try to get to you as soon as we can. So with that, that's all I have. And as I mentioned, if you guys are looking for me, I will be in here and then as well as at the table. So, oh, sure, yes.
What's an MHI?
Medium household income. So every county has a different one, and with population limitations, we also sometimes have an MHI factor that if it's above, then we may not be able to help, but if you guys are below, then fair game. So, yes, sir. There are changes that are currently in the mix. There was a verbiage change, as I'm sure you're aware. Rick and I always like to say soon. It's everything. The program is executed out of Washington, so they're very territorial about it. So, like I said, the language that we always get is it's coming soon. It's been blue foldered, which means the lawyers have looked at it and it's moving its way up the chain. So, thank you, guys. Oh, I'm sorry. I would have to defer to Rick on that one.
Will you be providing a large portion of the funding, or is the owner of the plant expect to provide most of it? How does that normally work?
Typically, the organization, the non-for-profit, the government entity is obviously taking on the loan. So it's just at that point, whatever the project is calling for. So,
Okay.
sorry. All right, guys, thank you.
Thanks, Chris. So I want to thank Dave for the invite for the Department of State to come speak about our programs that can assist communities and nonprofits providing broadband and other telecommunication services to their communities. One of the cool things about having money is you get to come talk to folks and act like you're an expert. Really, the only expertise I have in telecommunications I got 20 years ago when I was a planner out of college and got to work with a group that was providing fiber to Middleburg Telephone. Didn't really know what I was doing, but I was climbing poles and I was in bucket trucks and running fiber. So if Jim Becker's here, hopefully that system's still up. But I want to introduce Mark Pattison, who's our director in our division at the Department of State. George Korchowski is also here. George is my colleague who works with our Appalachian program in the Southern Tier. You also heard from a lot of folks, I think, yesterday, and maybe part of today, who have worked with our programs. Joe Starks from ECC, Steve Manning, Jen Gregory, who's one of our partners on the Regional Planning Board in Southern Tier East in Binghamton. Marcia Weber was here from Southern Tier Central, and Jim Becker again, all who have either partner with us or work through our programs to bring various types of infrastructure to their communities. I'm going to talk briefly about 3 of our programs, and if you are not in the North Country or the Southern Tier, I apologize for the first 2. We cover basically about half the state with some federal funding that not only works for infrastructure for telecommunications, but also a variety of projects from healthcare, water, wastewater, workforce development, all that. But really, our programs can cover. I went through the program for this conference and broadband for economic development, K through 12, libraries, community programs, broadband for agriculture, a very important topic right now, wireless, first responders, local governments, 911 consolidation, and also local governments' records and data management. We've all done that through our programs. We're not. Chris mentioned $2.4 billion to New York in the last 6 years. I think it would take us probably a century to get that much money of ours into broadband. But valuable programs anyways, and I appreciate you folks coming to hear about them. So the ARC program, I don't know if folks have heard about that. It's a federal-state partnership that gets about $75 million a year to allocate to 13 states. And in New York, it is the Southern Tier, Schoharie County out to Chautauqua County, and the 12 counties in between. And what ARC does, it provides 50-50 matching grants. In New York State, it's up to $150,000 per project for, again, any type of community development program, basically, but also telecommunications. We get about $2 million a year for the Southern Tier. And ARC has a very specific infrastructure goal for telecommunications and broadband. Facilitate the development and planning of investment, encourage applications in education. We funded a number of projects with BOCES and school districts, as well as, when we're deploying other types of infrastructure, let's try to dig once. Somebody mentioned that earlier today, and how do we include, the needs for the future when we're developing our infrastructure. Just a few examples of what we funded through the Appalachian program. Jen's group, Southern Tier East and Southern Tier Central and Corning, a few years back applied to us for funding to basically develop a financial model for deploying fiber. And that has moved forward now in Southern Tier Central and the Corning area. That program helped them leverage a $10 million investment from Corning Incorporated to lay that fiber. And Steve Manning was here from Southern Tier Network, and I'm sure you heard him talk about that project. But ARC was there at the beginning to help identify the need and also the financial plan. And more recently, just a micro look at what we can do. The incubator in Corning, Ceramics Corridor, is now expanding. They hope to expand to an abandoned manufacturing facility where Schweitzer aircraft was, and they're going to move some of their incubator residents to a more high-ceiling facility where they can actually do stuff. And ARC is going to pay for, we hope, fiber and other telecommunications within that building so they can leverage that resource and that abandoned facility into economic development. We also paid for a wireless study in Southern Tier West, which led to the deployment of wireless technology in rural Cattaraugus County to at least 3 communities that didn't have any access to high-speed broadband. So I know today and yesterday there's a lot of talk about different types of deployment. Again, I am not the expert in that. I don't really know which one's better than the other. I just like to be able to get on the internet, of course, like everybody else. The Northern Border Regional Commission was modeled after the Appalachian Commission. Again, it's 14 counties, and it covers these 4 states, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and New York. Very new. It's only 5 years. But again, the Northern Border has 7 priorities: transportation, water and wastewater, telecommunications, workforce, basic health care, resource conservation, and renewable energy. And we funded a few projects in telecommunications under this program. Basically, the funding structure is a grant program, 80-20, federal 80, local, state, and federal 20% match to 12 of the 14 counties. Unfortunately, Jefferson and Hamilton County have been deemed more economically competitive. Not quite, sure how they did that, but those projects will have to have a 50-50 cost share with the grant. And again, we get about $1 million for New York's Northern Border area. Through this program, we funded a few projects I just want to highlight. The Canton-Potsdam Hospital merged or is cooperating with another hospital on a telemedicine project. We helped with the infrastructure for that. And then the Ogdensburg Bridge and Port Authority applied to the program for some fiber deployment to their business park that they felt was key to job creation and job retention. Not the huge projects that other folks can fund, but again, how do we maximize our key institutions like Jen talked about yesterday, Jen Gregory, and we can help with those types of projects. The last program that we have at the Department of State is the Local Government Efficiency Program, and that can cover the whole world, basically. We start with municipal consolidation, which has nothing to do with broadband, but all the way up to helping schools, local governments share technology. We can pay for planning and implementation. These are the local governments that are eligible. Basically, if it's providing a public service, you can come to the LG program for assistance, so long as you're either functionally consolidating a service or sharing a service. We've always had the question, can we do technology? Yes, of course. But technology sometimes doesn't have that big cost, or folks don't understand what you're going to be sharing or consolidating. Local governments aren't necessarily the most technically efficient. But we have funded a few projects with this. Planning and implementation, as I said, $12,500 per local government for planning, up to $100,000. Then for implementation, $200,000 per local government, up to $1 million. This program is currently open. The consolidated funding application, we're part of that. So you would apply online and work with your Regional Economic Development Council to prioritize projects through the LGE program. Just a few examples. We helped the Development Authority of the North Country identify opportunities for sharing GIS with Jefferson, Lewis, and St. Lawrence County. And then the Erie 1 BOCES did what I thought was a pretty great project. Seemed pretty simple, but they linked all their schools in a management program for their computers. And what they do is they just basically turn them off when they're not being used, and it's saving millions of dollars for those schools. Again, more of an application than a deployment, but a very good project. So that's us. That's our contact information. I have some cards here I can hand out, but I thank you for your time, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Before we take our break, I just wanted to thank each and every one of the speakers here. It's an incredible amount of resources, and more importantly, people that are so passionate about broadband and helping local communities all around the board. Deb Socia, Next Century, I mean, you have been lauded nationally in terms of all your work. We appreciate your help. Steve Ross, I know he was on a call with Angelo a couple weeks ago, I think, for about an hour and a half or so. Incredible amount of resources that you bring to the table, and you saw his slide deck. I mean, these are resources that are available today to be able to do the things that you want to do. So that's just and you do it because you want to. You're passionate about broadband, and we really appreciate your help there as well. We've been partnering with the Department of State for a number of years, George and Kyle, and again, just great state partners to work with. Actually, the Secretary of State actually dealt with an issue with Puerto Rico coming. I think you heard that earlier from Amy. And, you know, I work with him personally on that. I mean, you're just very involved, the whole agency. We've been partners with George and Tony Giardina and Kyle for years, and I really appreciate their efforts. One of the things I think that came from your slide deck, Kyle, was the planning and design. Often we get questions about how can we actually start the work in terms of, you know, getting a consultant in or being able to do some of the planning, design, and feasibility, and you really have the resources for that, so that's really a key piece of that. We're sometimes restricted on some of the grants that we have for the capital piece of that, so they're very important resources. So please give a round of applause for everybody for that and all the resources they have. Thank you. I think this works right into about a 15-minute break before we start the next session, so have a cup of coffee, and any questions, just let me know.